The Zork were more than just conquerors. They were legends. Their empire stretched across the stars, ruling over the deadliest planets in the galaxy. No species had ever stopped them. No world had ever survived their invasion. They had crushed civilizations that thrived in acid rain, overthrown empires that lived in lava-filled landscapes, and broken warriors who fought under skies filled with poisonous gas. Every time, they adapted. Every time, they won. Their warriors were unmatched, genetically enhanced, battle-hardened, and armed with the deadliest weapons ever created. They had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. Their warships, massive metal behemoths armed with plasma cannons and planet-busting missiles, had never lost a battle. For the Zork, war was not a question of if they would win. It was a question of how quickly the enemy would fall. And now, their sights were set on a new world. A blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth. To them, it was nothing special. Another planet to conquer. Another species to enslave. The Zork had analyzed Earth's biology, its gravity, its climate. The planet was far from the most extreme world they had conquered. The species, called humans, had no natural armor, no sharp claws, no venom. They were weak, fragile, and yet, something felt off. High Commander Zorvin stood at the bridge of his warship, staring at the holographic display of Earth. He had led the invasion of over 300 worlds, and yet, for the first time in centuries, something in his gut felt uneasy. "Have we received a surrender transmission?" he asked his communication officer. "No, Commander," the officer replied. "Earth has been silent." Zorvin narrowed his eyes. That was unusual. Every species reacted in one of two ways: immediate surrender or immediate attack. But this silence was unsettling. "Send the first wave. Let's see what these humans are capable of," he ordered. Within minutes, dropships filled with Zork warriors descended toward Earth's surface. Their mission was simple: land, establish control, and prepare for full-scale occupation. Zorvin watched as the ships entered the planet's atmosphere. There was no resistance, no missile launches, no defense systems activating. It was almost too easy. But then, silence. The moment the ships entered the lower atmosphere, all transmissions were lost. The signals disappeared as if the planet itself had swallowed them whole. Zorvin clenched his jaw. "Status report," he barked. "Commander, we've lost contact with the first wave," an officer said, his voice trembling. "They're gone." That was impossible. Even on the most dangerous death worlds, their soldiers had at least managed to report back before being wiped out. This was something else, something unnatural. "Send the second wave," Zorvin ordered, hiding his growing unease. Another fleet of dropships descended. This time, they were heavily armed. War mechs, heavy artillery, shock troopers. This was no scouting mission. This was a show of force. But once again, silence. No gunfire, no distress calls, no signals at all. It was as if the planet itself had consumed them. Zorvin's grip tightened on the control panel. He had never seen anything like this before. "Launch recon drones. I want to see what happened." The drones were fast, silent, and nearly impossible to detect. If anything remained of their forces, the drones would find them. Minutes passed. The bridge remained silent as everyone watched the screens, waiting for a sign, any sign, of what was happening down there. Then, one by one, the drones vanished. No explosions, no interference, no signs of attack. Just gone. Fear spread through the crew. Zork warriors were bred for battle. But this was something different. This was not war. This was a trap. Zorvin took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "We need ground troops," he decided. "No more ships. No more machines. I want an elite unit of our best warriors, heavily armed, to go down there and bring me answers." His second-in-command hesitated. "Commander, if we keep losing forces at this rate, you dare question me?" Zorvan growled, his reptilian eyes burning with fury. The officer lowered his head. "No, Commander. I will send the troops immediately." As the warriors prepared for deployment, Zorvan stared at the planet below. He had conquered countless worlds, but this was the first time he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Fear. The Zork were invincible. They ruled the deadliest worlds in the galaxy. But for the first time, they had no idea what they were walking into. The elite warriors of the Zork did not know fear. They were the best of the best, trained from birth, enhanced with cybernetics, and armed with the deadliest weapons in the galaxy. Every soldier in the landing force had fought on countless death worlds, surviving conditions that would kill most species in seconds. And yet, as they stepped onto Earth's surface, something felt wrong. The landscape was too quiet. The air was too still. There were no signs of destruction, no wreckage from the previous waves of invaders. It was as if the other soldiers had simply vanished. Commander Varrock, leader of the ground forces, scanned the area. His helmet's visor displayed a complete tactical analysis. Terrain mapping, heat signatures, energy readings. Everything looked normal. Too normal. "This is not how an invasion works," he muttered. They had expected resistance. Fighter jets, missile barrages, planetary defenses. Instead, the humans had done nothing. No war cries, no surrender, no attacks. Just silence. "Squad 1, secure the perimeter," Varrock ordered. "Squad 2, search for survivors from the first waves." The warriors moved out, their advanced armor blending into the environment. They moved like shadows, silent, swift, lethal. Minutes passed, then an hour. Still, no enemy contact. No signs of battle. No bodies. It was as if the first waves of Zork troops had simply ceased to exist. Then the first scream. It came from the northern sector. A sharp, distorted shriek over the comms, then static. "Squad 2, report." Varrock barked. Silence. Then a second scream. Another soldier, gone. "Squad 1, regroup, now," Varrock commanded, his instincts screaming that something was hunting them. The warriors regrouped in the center of the landing zone, forming a tight defensive perimeter. Plasma rifles aimed in every direction. Motion scanners activated. Yet, the jungle-like terrain around them showed nothing. Then the bodies fell from the sky. Zork warriors, their armor shredded, their bodies twisted in unnatural ways. Some had their helmets crushed as if by an invisible force. Others had deep claw marks across their torsos, but no creature had been detected. The warriors froze. The mighty Zork, conquerors of death worlds, now stood terrified. Then the voices began. Soft whispers, faint echoes. A voice spoke in the Zork language, but it wasn't a recording. It wasn't a transmission. It was a voice, imitating them. "Why have you come?" The warriors turned, trying to locate the source. The voice came from everywhere. "You are not the first. You will not be the last." Varrock clenched his plasma rifle, scanning for a target. "Shivjo yourself," he roared. Silence. Then, a single gunshot. One of the warriors collapsed, a hole between his eyes, a perfect, precise human bullet. Panic spread through the ranks. The Zork had fought against plasma, energy weapons, and even bioweapons, but primitive bullets. That made no sense. "Contact," one soldier shouted, firing wildly into the trees. The others followed, unleashing the storm of plasma fire. Trees burned. Smoke filled the air. But when the dust settled, there was no enemy. No bodies. No movement. Nothing. Varrock gritted his teeth. "Enough. We regroup. We." A knife burst through his lieutenant's chest. The warrior gasped, his powerful body falling instantly. The blade had been thrown with inhuman precision, cutting through armor as if it were paper. Then, more shots, more knives. The Zork began to fall. They fired back, but their weapons hit only air. The enemy wasn't fighting them. The enemy was hunting them. For the first time in history, the invincible warriors of the Zork knew what it felt like to be prey. And somewhere in the shadows, the humans watched. Varrock's breathing was heavy. His enhanced heart pounded in his chest, but not from exertion, from fear. The Zork did not fear. They conquered, they crushed, they destroyed. But now something unseen was tearing them apart. His squad had been reduced to half its strength in minutes, killed silently, efficiently. No plasma blasts, no energy-based weaponry, just bullets, blades, and death from the shadows. The comms crackled. "Commander, we..." Static. Another warrior gone. Varrock clenched his plasma rifle tighter. No more. Form a defensive line. The remaining Zorkai warriors huddled together, backs against each other, weapons aimed in every direction. Their armor, designed to withstand energy-based attacks, was proving useless against primitive human weapons. Armor-piercing rounds ripped through their defenses, and the knives. The knives were worse. Thermal scanners. Activate. Varrock barked. Helmets switched to thermal vision. At last, movement. There, figures, small and fast, weaving through the trees. Humans, but they moved too quickly, too precisely. Their patterns were unpredictable. Every time a Zork fired, the humans were already gone. Then, a whistle. Sharp, piercing. It cut through the air like a signal. A trap. Then, hell broke loose. From the trees, the ground, the shadows, the humans attacked. They weren't an army. They weren't charging with rage. They were hunters. The first warrior fell, throat slit by a blade. The second was shot through the visor, a bullet shattering his helmet. Varrock turned, firing wildly, but the humans moved too fast. One slid under his shot, rolling forward before driving a blade through a Zork's knee. The mighty warrior screamed. Another human dropped from above, landing on a soldier's back, twisting his neck with a sickening crack. More gunfire, more blades. The Zork were dying. The hunters were laughing. "Not so invincible now, are you?" a voice sneered. Varrock saw him. A human, smaller than any Zorkai, but his eyes were filled with something terrifying. Calm, controlled violence. Varrock raised his plasma rifle. Too slow. The human moved first. The knife flew. Pain exploded in Varrock's arm as the blade buried itself deep into his joint. His weapon fell. Before he could react, the human was already in front of him. A punch. Brutal. Precise. Varrock's helmet cracked. His vision blurred. Then, the human whispered, deadly calm, "Welcome to Earth." Varrock felt cold steel pierce his side. His enhanced body, capable of surviving extreme conditions, failed him. The last thing he saw was his warriors falling, one by one. The last thing he heard, the laughter of the hunters. Earth had no grand armies, no mighty fleets. It didn't need them. It had monsters. The battlefield was silent now. The mighty Zorkai, conquerors of death worlds, lay scattered, broken and lifeless. Their armor, once symbols of their invincibility, was now riddled with bullet holes, slashed apart by blades, or crushed under human ingenuity. In the dim moonlight, human warriors moved like shadows, cleaning up the remains. They searched for survivors, not to rescue, but to interrogate. Varrock barely clung to consciousness. His vision swam. His body refused to move. The pain in his side burned like fire. Then, a boot pressed down on his chest. He groaned, weak, helpless. A human warrior loomed over him. No massive armor, no advanced tech, just a man with cold, calculating eyes. The same human who had bested him before. "You're still breathing." The human mused, nudging Varrok's side with his boot. Tough bastard. Varrok gritted his teeth. This was impossible. This species was impossible. They should have been crushed like all the others. The human crouched, meeting Varrok's dazed gaze. "Tell me something, big guy," he said, voice calm. "Your kind thinks they're the apex predators of the galaxy, right?" Varrok snarled, but it was weak. "We are unstoppable." The human laughed. But it wasn't the mocking laughter of an arrogant warrior. It was the quiet, knowing chuckle of a predator toying with dying prey. "That's funny," the human said, tapping his blade against his knee. "Because right now, you look pretty damn stoppable to me." Varrok refused to accept this. The Zor-K had taken countless worlds. Death worlds even worse than Earth. Yet here, against primitive humans, they had fallen. How? The human must have seen the question in his eyes. "You don't get it, do you?" he asked, leaning in. "You thought Earth was just another battlefield, just another planet to burn." The human's grin vanished. "But this isn't a battlefield. This is a hunting ground." Varrok froze. "You wanted a war," the human continued. "But wars are about armies, strategy, power. That's not what this is." The human pressed the tip of his knife just under Varrok's throat. "This," he whispered, "this is a hunt." Varrok's breath caught. "You're the prey," the human said. "And we're the apex predators." In that moment, Varrok finally understood. Humans were not strong because of their technology. They were not superior because of their numbers. They were dangerous because they adapted. They didn't fight wars. They ended them. Varrok's vision blurred. His consciousness faded. The last thing he heard was the human's voice, quiet but full of promise. "Welcome to extinction." The Zor-K fleet hung over Earth like a shadow of doom. Even with their ground forces decimated, they still had warships, colossal vessels armed with planetary siege weapons. From orbit, their commanders watched the battle unfold in horror. "Impossible," High Commander Zorlan whispered, his claws digging into the metal armrest of his throne-like chair. "How are we losing?" A junior officer, his face pale and drenched in sweat, hesitated before speaking. "Commander, the humans." Zorlan slammed his fist against the console. "I can see what they're doing." I asked how. The humans had no energy shields, no plasma cannons, no warships that rivaled the Zor-K dreadnoughts. Yet, somehow, they were winning. The ground forces were annihilated, hunted like prey. The survivors were going dark, their distress signals cut off one by one. And now, Earth's counterattack had begun. Zorlan turned toward the massive viewport. The blue planet below looked peaceful, but it wasn't. The skies burned. Hundreds, thousands, of missiles roared upward from the surface. Hypersonic weapons, railgun slugs, electronic warfare pulses. The humans didn't have energy-based weapons, but what they did have was just as terrifying. Kinetic force and precision. One of the Zor-K officers gasped as the first wave of human counterfire hit the fleet. Explosions erupted. Not mere energy bursts, but metal tearing through metal. Ships broke apart, debris scattering into the void. "They're targeting our reactors," another officer screamed. Zorlan watched in disbelief as an entire battleship ruptured, its explosion spreading to nearby vessels. The humans had calculated the weak points of their warships and exploited them mercilessly. "This is a death world species," one officer whispered in horror. "They don't fight fair. They fight to survive." Zorlan knew it was true. Humanity wasn't fighting to win a war. They were fighting to kill. And it was working. He spun toward his bridge crew. "Retreat. Pull back to high orbit. We must regroup." But then, every screen in the warship flickered. Static. Then, a human voice. "Leaving so soon." The humans had hacked their comms. A video feed appeared. A human general, clad in battle-worn armor, stood in a dark command center. His face was calm. Too calm. "You came here thinking you'd conquer us," he said, voice even. "That you'd burn our cities, break our armies, and make this world your own." His eyes narrowed. "But you made one mistake." The screen zoomed out. Behind the general, the humans' own war machines came online. Autonomous drones, cyber warfare units, hidden orbital weapons. "You didn't just attack a planet," the general continued. "You attacked Earth." He leaned in slightly, voice dropping to a whisper. "And Earth fights back." The signal cut. Then, hell itself was unleashed. From Earth's surface, secret military stations fired experimental weapons. Stealth bombers, undetected until now, pierced Zor-K defenses. And then, the humans did the unthinkable. They didn't just attack the fleet. They boarded it. Dropships launched from Earth, slipping through the chaos. Elite strike teams, enhanced soldiers, cybernetic warriors, special forces, stormed the Zor-Kai warships. One by one, the invaders became the invaded. Zorlan turned, too late. The doors to his bridge exploded inward. Through the smoke, human soldiers marched in, weapons raised, eyes cold. One of them stepped forward, a woman with scarred armor and a smirk. She tilted her head at Zorlan. "Not so fun when the prey fights back, huh?" Zorlan snarled. The humans raised their weapons and fired. The Zor-K Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, crushed countless species beneath their rule. No enemy had ever forced them to retreat. Until now. On the bridge of his warship, High Commander Zorlan stood frozen, staring at the impossible. His fleet, his unstoppable armada, was dying. Earth's counterattack had been relentless, a perfect combination of brute force and strategy. Missiles pierced energy shields, kinetic weapons ripped through hulls, and electronic warfare blinded Zor-Kai systems. Their warriors were being slaughtered. And now, humans stood on his bridge. Zorlan's second-in-command, General Ktoth, bared his fangs. "We are the Zor-Kai. We will not." A single gunshot. The alien's head snapped back, purple blood spraying the control panels. His massive body collapsed. The human soldier lowered her pistol. "You were saying?" she asked coldly. Zorlan's claws tightened around the armrests of his command throne. "You, filthy Deathworlders, you don't understand what you have done." The human commander, Captain Rice, stepped forward. Her armor was scratched, her face covered in soot, but her eyes were sharp, unbreakable. "You came here to wipe us out," Rice said, "to make us slaves, to burn our cities and call it a victory." She took another step closer. "But now you know the truth." Zorlan bared his needle-sharp teeth. "And what truth is that?" Rice tilted her head, as if she were amused by the question. "The truth," she said, raising her rifle, "that you picked the wrong species to mess with." The next few seconds were chaos. Zorlan lunged forward, his claws slicing through the air. Rice sidestepped effortlessly, driving her elbow into his side. Another soldier fired. Bullets slammed into the control consoles, sparks flying. The bridge erupted into battle. Zor-Kai warriors rushed in, roaring, wielding their energy blades. But the humans, they moved like hunters. Gunfire thundered through the air. The Zor-K officer charged at a human soldier, only to be blown backward by a railgun shot. Another alien swung a blade at Reyes, but she ducked, driving her combat knife deep into his throat. Zorlan snarled in fury. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Humans weren't supposed to be this strong, this ruthless. His people were dying. His fleet was falling. The unstoppable empire was losing. And then the final blow came. A human comms officer tapped into the ship's controls. "Captain Rice, we've cracked their fleet's command network." Rice smiled. "Good. Shut them down." A single command was sent. Across the battlefield, Zor-Kai warships powered down. Engines failed. Weapons ceased fire. Shields collapsed. Zorlan staggered backward. No. The human commander turned to him. Her voice was calm. Absolute. This war is over, she said. You just don't know it yet. The Battle of Earth, the battle that was supposed to be an easy victory for the Zorkai, was over. And humanity had won. The once mighty Zorkai fleet now drifted lifeless above Earth, their warships disabled, shattered, or burning. What was supposed to be an easy conquest had turned into a nightmare. Inside the flagship, High Commander Zorlan lay against the cold metal floor, his wounds seeping purple blood. Around him, his warriors were either dead or captured. He could hear the distant thunder of explosions as human forces secured the last of his ships. Footsteps approached. Zorlan forced his weary eyes open and saw Captain Rice. She stood over him, calm, unshaken, victorious. You should have left Earth alone, she said. Zorlan's claws scraped weakly against the deck. This is not possible. No species has ever resisted your empire. Rice cut in, defied your armadas, crushed your invasion. She crouched beside him. Her voice turned ice-cold. Then let me say this slowly so you understand. Zorlan gritted his teeth. You lost, Rice said. Outside the ship, Earth's forces moved through the wreckage, salvaging Zorkai technology, securing prisoners, and ensuring that no enemy warship remained a threat. The sky was filled with burning wreckage, a graveyard of the invincible empire. But the war was not over. Not yet. Zorlan looked at Reyes, his hatred mixing with confusion. What now? Will you destroy my people? Wipe us out, like we would have done to you? Reyes stood up, looking down at him. She could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear every empire had when they realized they had pushed too far. No, she said, that's what your kind does. We're not monsters. She turned away, walking toward the command console. With a single motion, she activated the ship's long-range broadcast to the entire Zorkai Empire. This is Captain Rice of Earth, she said. Her voice carried across the stars. Your invasion has failed. Your fleets lie in ruin. Your strongest warriors have been defeated. She leaned closer to the transmitter. And we have a message for you. A pause, a silence so deep that even the stars seemed to listen. Stay away from Earth. If you ever come back, she continued, her voice dark with promise, you will learn just how merciful we were today. With that, she cut the transmission. The warning had been given. The choice was theirs. As Earth's fleet began its final sweep, Rice turned back to Zorlan one last time. You thought we were just another weak species, just another world to burn. She smirked. Now you know the truth. Zorlan closed his eyes. The humans were worse than a death world. They were the end of empires,